look at some of the things, the archaeology related to Jesus' crucifixion and burial. In Jerusalem, they found, this is the only bone they found with a crucifixion nail in it. They think they nailed it to the cross, hit a knot, got bent, couldn't pull it out, so they just left it in there. The Romans will pull out the nails and reuse them. Scientists studying this, the nail is going right through the heel bone of the foot. And then there was a piece of wood to hold it in place. And this is how they think he was crucified, on the sides of the cross, not crossed feet in the front like you usually see in pictures today. And then some think the nail is going right in the wrist area. Then they had little tear bottles. You would collect your tears in little bottles and put it in the tomb. We have some original tear bottles over here from the time of Jesus. Psalm 56:8 says, "Put thou my tears into thy bottle." So they would collect their tears in ancient times. Then down here we have an alabaster jar, and they would fill it with frankincense, myrrh, spikenard to wash the body off, wrap the body up. And then at the time of Jesus, you come back 1 year later to the tomb to gather up the bones and then put the bones in a bone box called an ossuary. Back over here we have a very famous ossuary. It's very beautifully carved. Now on the side here, it says Caiaphas. This is the Caiaphas of the New Testament. He was the high priest during the trial of Jesus, very rich, very powerful, and has a very beautiful bone box. The other one, I don't know if you can see too well, on the side it says, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. This would be the James who wrote the book of James in the New Testament, leader of the early church, Acts chapter 15, and half brother of Jesus. There's a big controversy about this. There was a big trial about whether it was legally or illegally gotten and if they wrote on the side there or not. And this here is in Israel Museum in Jerusalem. Oh, we're now at church history. So we're going to take a quick overview of church history. And for the first 300 years, about 300 years of church history, there's on and off persecution of the Christians. And the most famous one at the beginning is Nero. He blames the Christians for the burning of Rome. And so he gathers up the Christians, and some of them he ties them up and lights them on fire to light his gardens at night, one of the stories goes. So it starts with Nero, the imperial persecution, and it's on and off, not all the time. So it's sporadic for 300 years. You have Justin Martyr, you've got Polycarp, Clement of Rome, Thecla, the first Christian woman martyr, and you have Fox's Book of Martyrs recording these things. Martyr's Mirror from 1660 of the martyrs. You have the Apostolic Fathers. These are the ones just after the apostles and their writings. One of them is the Didache. The Didache is our earliest church manual. Very interesting. Now, other ones, the Shepherd of Hermas, and other ones, the writings here of the Apostolic Fathers. Then Constantine comes to power. He's the first Christian Roman emperor, and he issues the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, where he makes it legal to be a Christian. So now it's no longer illegal to be a Christian, it's legal, and this stops the persecution of the Christians. Then in 325 AD, he calls for the Council of Nicaea, and they put together the Nicene Creed, which is said in a number of churches today. His mother, Helena, had a great effect on him, and she traveled to the Holy Land. and around the Holy Land trying to find these key sites that Jesus did miracles or something important happened in the Bible. And then Constantine would build a church there. And the most famous one is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre there in Jerusalem, where supposedly that's where Jesus died on the cross, was buried, and rose again. Helena is carrying a cross. Supposedly she found the true cross of Jesus, but I take that with a grain of salt. Then we have Jerome translating the Bible into the Latin Vulgate that the Roman Catholic Church uses. You have St. Augustine and his writings, Eusebius' church history, and you have Thomas Aquinas, and a number of these other writings here. Then the Bible had to be still handwritten. There was no printing press yet. And so it all had to be handwritten in very beautiful writing and colors. The Silver Bible was written in silver ink, but when they came to the name of God, they wrote it out in gold ink for the king. Then and this is the time of political power, the papal power, and in 1054 A.D., there's a big split in the church between the Roman Catholic Church in the west and the Eastern Orthodox Church there in the east. And a lot of it was over icons. So the Eastern Orthodox, you could draw on wood and make pictures on wood, but the Roman Catholics, they would have sculptures and other things, and so they debated about that along with other things, and they split in 1054 BC, AD, excuse me. Then Pope Urban II in 1095 calls for the Crusades, for the knights to go over there and take the Holy Land, and they did. They took Jerusalem and held it for about 100 years until Saladin and the Muslims come and take it back. And here's a little bit about Islam. Mecca, the most holy site, and then Medina is the second most holy site where he fled to, and then the Dome of the Rock, the third most holy site for Muslims. And here's what's inside. Supposedly there's a footprint of Muhammad or his horse there in the Dome of the Rock. And you're not allowed to go into there today, but I went in there years ago when you could. And I have one book here. Dan Gibson, he thinks that the earliest mosques point to Petra, not to Mecca. And I've written a book here, Insights to Islam, along with Joshua, my son, pointing out the problems with Islam and the Quran. Here we have a very beautiful, one of the most beautiful Qurans there are. And I point out the problems with Islam. Then over here, the King James 1611, a facsimile. It was very big. It was like a pulpit Bible. And you notice here it says Psalms, but look at that. What looks like an F is an S in older English. Then here's some original pages from the King James 1611. And then that was too big to carry around, so they printed in 1612 a smaller King James Bible. And then in 1613, they printed another one. So those are the ones you could actually carry around with you. Now I want to switch to a little history of Judaism. During the Feast of Purim, the Jews read through the book of Esther. And when they come to Haman's name, the enemy of the Jews, they all make noise to drown out Haman's name, the enemy of the Jews. Then they used a yod or pointer to follow along in Holy Scripture so you don't touch the Holy Scripture. Then they have a mezuzah that they would put on the doorpost at an angle. Then when they pray, they put the prayer shawl on. They put a phylactery around their head, around their arm, with scripture verses inside, mainly from the book of Deuteronomy, that tell you to do that. Then we have the Mishnah, the oral giving of the law that wasn't written down. And then they write it down here in the middle. Rabbis commented all around it, and that makes up the Talmud. And an English translation of the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, is about 40 volumes long. So there's a lot there in the Talmud. Then over here we have the Aleppo Codex. That was in Aleppo, Syria. In 1947, riots broke out. The Aleppo synagogue was burned to the ground, and they thought the Codex was, but they were able to salvage it and smuggle it into Jerusalem, where it's now with the Dead Sea Scrolls. According to Maimonides, it's one of the oldest, most accurate Hebrew Bibles. And now they're working on checking in their own translation of it. Then recently, we have the world's oldest near-complete Hebrew Bible, the Sassoon Bible, which sold for $38.1 million. And hopefully they'll make it available for scholars and for translations of it. Then we have the book of Zohar in the Middle Ages, which is the basis for the Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. Then over here we have the Ferrara Bible, the Bible of the Sephardic Jews of Spain, written in Ladino. It's sort of like a mixture of Hebrew and Spanish. Then we have a timeline across here. And the most important right here is 1948, when Israel becomes a nation again. The other key thing here we have 1967, the Six-Day War, where they take back Jerusalem and some peace accords there. It gives you a little idea of the history, modern history of Israel. Then we want to move into the next room. So we had persecution of the Christians. Then we have political power with Constantine, the popes. And now we come to the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther nails 95 theses to the door of the Wittenberg Church in Germany in 1517. One of the key problems was the sale of indulgences, where if you had enough money, you could buy your way out of purgatory and buy your way into heaven. And Martin Luther was against that. And we have the Lutherans today that follow him. Then we have John Calvin in Geneva, Switzerland. And he writes the Institutes of Christian Religion. And we have many today. We have the Reform Christian Church. You have many Baptists following along these lines, Congregationalists, Presbyterians following John Calvin. And then we have Zwingli in Zurich, Switzerland, and he starts the Anabaptist movement. And one of them was Menno Simon, and his writings here, and the followers of Menno Simon are the Mennonites. There was one Mennonite named Ammon who thought Menno Simon is just not strict enough, so he splits off from them, and they're called the Amish today.